This podcast is powered by Pelotonia. To learn more about our goaltend cancer, visit pelotonia.org or see the link in the show notes.
Since that moment, like I said, I've always just kind of wanted to help other people, help heal other people. I think I got a quick, course on what was important to me.
Welcome to One Goal, a storytelling podcast from Pelotonia. We're a passionate community dedicated to funding innovative cancer research. I'm your host and Chief Operating Officer of Pelotonia, Joe Apgar. Your journey with us to the finish line begins now. Pelotonia is powered by an unstoppable community, and it's through research we will see an end to cancer. We want to thank our major funding partners for making all of this possible: the American Electric Power Foundation, Huntington, the L Brands Foundation, and Peggy and Richard Santulli. If you've spent any length of time around the Pelotonia community, or if you're a reality TV fan, you've probably heard the name Ethan Zohn. Over the years, Ethan has been an incredible speaker at Pelotonia events, has participated as a rider, and has been a friendly face helping check in survivors during the Pelotonia weekend. A true legend. Wherever he goes, his outgoing, vibrant, and magnetic personality almost instantly creates an exciting and welcoming environment. This is just one of the many reasons we're thrilled to have him as part of the Pelotonia community. Another reason is that Ethan is an incredibly empathetic individual. He's someone who knows how cancer impacts a person and their family. He also knows, in a few different ways, what it means to be a survivor. I sat down with Ethan and discussed his story for this episode titled Old School Survivor.
I am currently calling you from the middle of the woods in New Hampshire, but I did not grow up here. I grew up outside Boston, and my entire childhood was pretty much revolving around soccer and sports. I was the youngest of three brothers, and so they would just take me into the backyard and just pummel soccer balls in my face. So of course I became a goalkeeper. And
that's how it works. I like it.
Yeah, that's how it works. So when you're the youngest one and you're a little chubby, they just throw you in goal. And my whole thing with growing up playing soccer is I matured a lot faster than all my friends. So I've been 5'10" since 6th grade. I had a full mustache in grade school.
Wow.
So yeah. So they're like, let's stick that old guy in goal. And I towered over everyone else. But people soon caught up with me in terms of height and, physical makeup. So
5'10" in 6th grade is absolutely incredible. I feel like, when you see the Little League World Series on TV, and there's always the investigation about the one superstar kid who's 6'4", throwing 90 miles an hour. So that was you.
That was me. I was like the mini Tom Selleck, Jewish guy in goal with glasses and braces. And who is that guy? Where is he from?
Did he drive himself here? So let's talk about sort of the experience with your father going through cancer, and you're 14 and witnessing that. And what of that do you remember?
I remember a lot of it. At that age, very, young, impressionable. Both my brothers were away at college. So it was me and my mom at home, taking care of my dad, which is tough for any young person.
Sure.
And, I just, my mom was good. She kind of hid a little bit of the dark side from me. And, but, I was in and around it all the time. He wasn't strong enough to go upstairs. So I'd be the one waking up in the middle of the night, carrying to the bathroom, holding his hand and head when he's, throwing up and stuff like that. So that was traumatic for me. Growing up, my only connection to cancer was through my dad. And, in 1989, a stage 2 colorectal diagnosis turned terminal. And, research, this is what's all Pelotonia's about. Research wasn't available back then. And I just always think if my dad was diagnosed now, he'd probably still be alive. Since that moment, and like I said, I've always just kind of wanted to help other people, help heal other people. I think I got a quick course on what was important to me at an early age, what wasn't important to me. And I quickly learned that it was the community around me. It was my friends from soccer team, my friend from Temple. I'm Jewish. It's the community. They all supported me and my two brothers and my mom, and they kind of reinforced our values in a time when we felt completely alone. And none of my other friends had a parent that passed away, so I was the only one. And just trying to navigate that whole crazy situation at a young age was tough for me.
Do you remember what you guys talked about, if you talked about anything, if you didn't talk about anything?
Well, to be honest, I remember what I didn't talk to my dad about. It's going to sound weird, but as like a 14-year-old boy, like I don't ever remember like saying, I love you to my dad. Maybe I said it in passing or it was at a birthday. I love you, dad. But like, I never like had the conversation to let him know, like, listen, I love you. You're my father. And,
Yeah.
thank you for coming to my soccer games and, driving me around and just being the best father ever. I never had that opportunity and I missed that chance. And so that stuck with me for my whole life. Probably, yeah, probably some of the reasons for my issues in life anyway. But, that for me, just, I tell people things now, like I am fairly open book with a lot of people because I feel like nothing is more empowering than the truth. And I often talk to some folks that are caregivers and they ask like, what can we do as a caregiver? I'm like, well, I personally believe, like I said, just be truthful with the ones that you love, because often the things that a fighter is feeling, fear, sadness, disappointment, confusion, is the same exact that the things that the caregivers are feeling. But if you don't ever talk about it, then you're never going to know. And you can't, take the steps you need to come together to help you remain alive and stay healthy. So that's my advice to everyone out there. Listen, be truthful with your doctors and care team, with the people that love you, the people that are surrounding with you, because it can only open the lines of communication and help everyone, take care of each other better through this, difficult journey.
So you went on to play soccer in college, right?
Mm-hmm. I went to a small Division III school. It wasn't necessarily like a soccer powerhouse. However, after school, I traveled around for a little while trying to find my feet, and I ended up in Hawaii, of all places. I actually minored in marine biology. And so after college, I'm like, where is there a lot of water? So I'm like, Hawaii. So I moved to Hawaii. Yeah. I'm bound to find a job. Didn't work out. I ended up like cleaning beds and toilets in a youth hostel for about 6 months because I couldn't find a job. But then there's this open tryout for a new professional soccer team in Hawaii called the Hawaii Tsunami. And so I went down there, tried out as a walk-on, and I made it. All right, this is going to be my path. This is what I want to do. I want to try to make a go at playing professional soccer.
How long were you playing professional soccer in Hawaii, and what was the league?
So back then it was Major League Soccer, then it was USL, was the second division there. So I was playing in the USL, and I played for the Hawaii Tsunami for about a year and a half. Then I switched teams, and I started playing for a team called the Cape Cod Crusaders in Cape Cod, Massachusetts.
Okay, so you went from Hawaii back to the Northeast.
Yes, I did. The team in Hawaii, they weren't financially doing that great. And so all of our away games, we're hopping on a 6-hour flight to like the California area. And so it's just the team itself didn't survive. Then I moved to the Cape Cod Crusaders and started playing there. And when I was playing for the Crusaders, I met a guy by the name of Kirk Friedrich, and he had just played in Zimbabwe. And so he's like, went back for another season. And I'm like, he said, you got to come over here. It's absolutely incredible. We need a goalkeeper. You got to come to Zimbabwe. And so I'm like, sure. In Africa and Zimbabwe, we were getting 30, 40,000 people a game.
Oh, wow.
It's their passion. They save up all their money all week just so they can buy a ticket to the match that weekend. And so for me to kind of get that feel and the excitement of walking into a stadium with just people like screaming for you was just something that I'd always wanted to experience, but I couldn't get that here in the United States.
So what year was this that you went over to Zimbabwe?
This was 1999 and 2000.
Okay,
Y2K, baby.
I'm curious how you ended up going from soccer to ending up on a TV show.
Right.
And like, how do you make that jump? And how does that opportunity present itself in your life?
Well, I returned from Zimbabwe, and to continue playing in the United States, my time over there, I wasn't getting much playing time, and my friends had left. So I came back to play in the United States, and I guess I could say my career was spiraling out of control. I wasn't, I was bouncing around team to team. I just couldn't get a starting spot. And so I kind of hung up the boots and I started to coach. So I coached at a Division I college in New Jersey called Fairleigh Dickinson University, staying in and around the sport. And while I was, coaching, I was also looking for some real work, a full-time job in New York City, got a job doing some advertising, but then I got fired. So here I was, bored in New York City with nothing to do. And I looked at my roommate, like, what do you want to do today? It's like, well, we can make a video for Survivor. I'm like, all right. There may or may not have been some beers involved. I have no idea. I can't remember. But it was something to do and occupy one day in New York City. And so we made this video to send into Survivor. And I was supposed to make a video for my buddy, and my buddy was supposed to make a video for me, but we ran out of time for him. And we only sent in my video. And then obviously I get on the show.
39 days, 16 people, 1 survivor.
And so it was a joke. It was just literally, it was a whim. We were bored. What are we going to do today? Let's make a video for Survivor.
Your buddy doesn't even get to submit his video. I mean, what a story.
When you apply to be on Survivor, you don't necessarily know where you're going. So I didn't know where I was going until I was on the layover in Amsterdam when I saw my next ticket and it said Nairobi. So I'm like, oh, hey, we're going to be playing this game someplace in Africa. So we went to Kenya, and from Kenya, then we got shot up to the Shaba National Reserve where they started filming the whole series. But yeah, it was a total, you just don't know. You just kind of give over all your, restrictions and ability to plan, and you just give it to them and they just do what they want and tell you what they want when they want.
I assume you don't really pack much to go on Survivor.
You're allowed 2 t-shirts, 2 pair of shorts, 2 pair of socks, and a pair of shoes.
Oh, wow, that's it.
And a hat. That was back then. Now you're allowed less. Now you're only allowed 1 shirt, 1 pair of pants, 2 pair of shoes, and a pair of socks, and a hat. So for me, the hardest part was the mental side of things. Because going into it, I was 27 years old. I was super fit. I felt comfortable socially, speaking with people and interacting that way. But the mental side of things, kind of the whole manipulation and backstabbing and lying, that just was very difficult for me to overcome, because Survivor's a game where you need to make friends with these people, but friendships based on trust, and you can't trust anyone because the whole point of the show is to vote everyone off. Right. You want to be the last person standing. I kind of changed my strat. I had every intention to be an evil, backstabbing, slimy little pig to get ahead in the game. But when I got out there and you take away food and you take away water, you're tired, you're hungry, your true person comes out. And so for me, that just wasn't who I was. And so I said, I'm going to try to play this game like I play my life. And for me, the personal relationships, being a part of the community, being a leader, being selfless, all those skills that or values that I learned growing up, I tried to apply within the game of the Survivor. And I'm kind of known as the nice guy, right? I got through the game without getting any votes against me, without telling any horrible lies, without hurting anyone's feelings. And that's because I aligned with other people who enjoy doing that stuff. And therefore, that was kind of the team I built around me to help me get ahead in the game. I was the assistant coach out there.
3 votes, Ethan. Ethan, you need just 1 more. The winner of Survivor Africa.
And obviously, you end up winning.
I won.
Survivor,
That's all you need to know. Sorry, no. If anyone hasn't watched it yet, I just spoiled the ending. I win.
Yeah, I feel like it's past the time of spoiling.
You think? 19 years? Yeah, it's pretty neat. It's really fascinating. Cool. It's a fascinating game, and this is a game that touches on every part of you as a human being: mental, physical, social, spiritual, environmental, financial. I always make the comparison to cancer, in the sense that cancer is something that touches every single part of you. Same with Survivor. And obviously, one's you're playing for your life and one you're playing for $1 million. But for me, that's something that's relatable to those who've been through cancer. It's just something that just knocks you out, knocks every part of you.
7 years later, you get diagnosed with cancer. I guess describe the feeling leading up to getting diagnosed.
So this is in 2008. I embarked on a world record-breaking dribble of a soccer ball from Boston, Massachusetts to Washington, D.C. to raise awareness for a charity that I'm involved with called Grassroots Soccer. So when I was in Washington, D.C. in the end and around November, we were finishing on December 1st, end of November, I tore my ACL. And so I was recovering from my ACL and I was on a lot of pain medicine. And then I got extremely itchy. And so I just thought it was like, okay, it's the pain meds. It's something that's going on with my knee, whatever. I let it persist and I tried every pill, cream, potion, lotion known to man, but the itch would not go away. And so then, I went to a doctor, a dermatologist, and they couldn't figure it out, and moved on to like a hematologist. And then and then a swollen lymph node popped out of my neck. And they found a 6 centimeter by 12 centimeter mass in my chest. And I was diagnosed with a rare form of lymphoma called CD20 positive Hodgkin's lymphoma.
And that was the ultimate gut punch. I mean, that came out of nowhere for you.
Totally sideswiped. I knew something was wrong with me, and it was probably pretty bad because it took 4 months to get to the final diagnosis. So I knew but I was happy to get a diagnosis because then I could start chemotherapy, which was going to get rid of the itch. And the itch was the thing that was just literally destroying me. It was so bad. That was my big presenting symptoms with night sweats and loss of weight. But I couldn't even wear clothes towards the end. It was that bad. Couldn't shower. Anytime I did want to put on clothes, I'd have to create a little barrier with super thick face cream all over my body to protect my body from my clothes. And I'd be sitting on my couch, my arms couldn't touch each other. My legs couldn't touch each other. So it was just because it would just cause the itch. So that tormented me for months. So I was happy to get the diagnosis on one side of things. On the other side of things, I was scared shitless. Like I said, my only connection to cancer was through my dad, and he passed away. And so I made the choice to go public, and I documented my journey on people.com with video blogs and articles. And I look for every opportunity to share my story. And so for me, it was a kind of a little bit of a cathartic distraction from the reality of what was going on in my life. And it made me feel good. Focusing on the plight of other people helps you heal.
You get diagnosed with cancer 2009. What was the bottom for you?
The bottom was going through chemo, radiation, and an autologous stem cell transplant. And that was great. The doctors felt the cancer was in remission. We're good to go. I start living my life. I build myself back up, like the invisible scars, the dump trucks full of uncertainty. They're waning. I do Amazing Race, another reality show. I traveled around the world to try to win that thing. And then I get back from that and my legs started getting itchy again. And I was diagnosed again with lymphoma. Getting the news that the cancer returned was deflating, exponentially more difficult than the first time around.
I think I'm remembering this right, from our conversations, but one of your brothers sort of stepped in, right?
So after I relapsed, the whole goal was to get me back into remission so I could get a second stem cell transplant, this time an allogeneic one, which is where you use someone else's stem cells, a donor to use their stem cells. So I was freaking out because as a person of ethnic descent, like I said, I'm an Ashkenazi Jew, it reduces your chance of finding a match on the registry by about 25%. So I knew I needed a transplant. I knew I needed a donor because my stem cells weren't working. And if I didn't have a blood-related donor within my brothers, I'd have to go to the registry. So that was a huge fear. And there's a little bit of a lapse between when you get diagnosed and when you actually find out if your brothers are a match. And so I have two older brothers. Lee's the middle guy, Leonard's the oldest. And so the doctors, they don't tell you if there is a match and who the match would be, because they don't want you treating one brother different than the other. So my whole family, extended family, we're placing bets. I'm like, is it going to be Lee? Is it going to be Leonard? Is it going to be Lee or Leonard? Because the doctors told us one of them is a match and will be good for your transplant, but they wouldn't tell us which one. Because if it's me and I knew which brother, I literally probably wouldn't let him leave the house. I'd make him wear a helmet all the time, eat healthy foods. Like you are my lifeline. If you die, I die. So don't leave the house, please. But I think that's why they do it. And Lee ended up being a 10 for 10 match, and Leonard was like a 0 for 10 match.
Oh, wow.
And so, we're looking, I'm like, Mom, you sure Leonard's related to me? Like, is there something you need to tell us? It's okay. It's okay. But it was funny because Lee ended up being the match and was generous enough. And obviously, he's my brother. So he was willing to, donate his stem cells to save my life, which is pretty awesome. As close to my brothers and my family that I was, they were a little bit too close. I was surrounded by so many people that love me so much, but I've never felt so alone in my life. So for me, I kind of needed to find a resource outside my immediate family. I came across this incredible organization called Immerman Angels, which is a peer-to-peer, support organization where they'll match you up with a cancer survivor that has been through the exact same thing that you've been through and stayed alive. And so you can connect with them, you can communicate with them. They are your mentor angel, and they can help you through the dark times. And so I met this guy named Gavin Robertson, which is an incredible guy. He was 35 years old. He had a girlfriend. He was sporty. He was just like me. And that's why they paired me up with him. And so he helped me through, my journey with cancer. And we made a deal. I said, if I stay alive, then you have to run the New York City Marathon with me. So we went through it all, 9-10 months, and then a whole nother, 12 months of me training to get ready for that thing. And we met for the first time at the starting line of the New York City Marathon.
Oh, so you hadn't met in person. You were just on the phone.
Over email. This is 2009. There wasn't Skype and Zoom back then. So we were texting, we were emailing, calls on the phone. And so I actually met him for the first time in person at the starting of the New York City Marathon, and we ran the marathon together.
That's incredible.
But having that person in your life for me it was a lifeline. It really was. And just to be able to connect with someone who's been through what you've been through and they stayed alive gave me hope. And I just needed him by my side because everyone in my immediate family and friend group just couldn't relate to me in that way.
Yeah, someone asked maybe the silly questions or the stupid questions too, or the questions you don't want to ask your mom, or you don't want to ask the doctor in front of people. And I think that's where, Immerman Angels, amazing organization that really provides mentors and pairs them with mentees, but it's also just the basic sort of premise of sharing your story. And
yes,
there's someone else that's going to benefit from it. You may or may not ever know about it, how your stories touch someone, but I just know that happens. I want to talk about Pelotonia, and I think the thing, and I still talk to people to this day, what people remember is that you rode. That you connected with hundreds of people along the ride, and people remember Ethan rode. How cool is that? Ethan's part of the community. You rode. I always thought that was just something really, really special. I don't know that you knew the gravity of riding, because a lot of speakers come in and speak and they leave, and that's okay. But you were just kind of along for the ride and said, yeah, I'll ride. Let's do this. And you rode. And
well, I remember first showing up and instantly feeling part of the community, which for now, there are people that have been riding for many years with you guys. And, I just felt instantly connected, which was an awesome feeling to have. Just when I got there, did not want to leave and wanted to keep coming back year after year.
Which you have.
I have.
You've come back, at least to every physical ride we've had.
Yes.
I expect to see you back this year too.
Yes. I mean, this last ride was tough because I don't know if you know this, but when was it? August something?
Yeah, it's beginning of August every year.
I had returned from Survivor, playing this most recent season of Survivor, season 40. Right. 2 weeks prior to that, I was probably 145, 150 pounds, it was a struggle for me to ride this time, harder than it probably would have been if I had chemotherapy in me.
There's so many things in your life, being on Survivor, being alone, being sort of malnourished, all these things, and going through cancer that actually are really relevant to what we've all gone through as a country, as a world. isolation, all of those things. Like, what's gotten you through, the last year with COVID and the pandemic going on? And like, how have you drawn on your experiences to, try to not make it so terrible?
So for me, I always talk about just the concept of acceptance. I know it might sound simple and trivial. However, when I was sick, I didn't want to admit that there's this cancer inside my body trying to kill me, but I had to. I had to in order to move on to the next phase of this journey, which was like I needed to map out how I wanted to live the next phase of my life. But if you aren't able to accept it, then you're just going to live in this denial phase. And so for me, it was my advice to folks is to kind of try to accept what's going on in the world in the current situation that you're in. And then you can move to that next phase, which is like, how do I want to plan how I'm going to live in isolation for the next 6-12 months? So you have to do that in order to map out what your life will look like, because I think there was just a lot of, if you're living in denial and the world is uncertain, it leads to this anxiety of kind of trying to predict what may or may not happen in the future. You're wishing life was what it was like in the past. You can't figure out what's going to happen in the future. And you're so focused on both of them, you're missing what's going on right now. It's just that whole concept of remaining present. Like, you can't change what happened to the past. You can change your connection and your relationship to the past. You can't predict the future. You can set an intention for the future. So what left is here is remaining present. So for me to remain present, to focus on what's happening today, when I was in treatment, I did the same exact thing, I'm doing the same exact thing now, and then to accept what's going on, and then just being able to make some plans.
I think the concept of acceptance is, and like you said, it actually seems overly simple, but I think it's a pretty deep and complicated sort of, path to put yourself through, but
and easier said than done.
Easier said than done, but spot on. I mean, that is exactly what needs to happen. I mean, in a diagnosis and just any bad situation is to, not accepting it just clouds your judgment.
Yeah. Acceptance is the first step to controlling anything you can't control, and then on the other side of acceptance is hope and resiliency. So if you can't imagine yourself in this new situation, you're not going to be able to get there. And that's what denial is. So if you accept this new situation, then you can actually work towards what you want to be.
What's next for you? What's next for Ethan?
I'm involved with, a charity t-shirt line called Old School Survivor. And that's been really fun for my wife and I to do this past year. We, basically when I hit 5 years in remission, I made this shirt called I'm an old school survivor from the cancer thing. And then the whole Survivor TV show came along again. And happened to be this old school, new school theme that just appeared out of nowhere on this season of Survivor. So I'm like, let's resurrect this old school Survivor thing. And I started selling t-shirts online, and it's been really fun, really successful. And so I'm going to keep going at it. People seem to like it. And, the show's always going to be on. There's always going to be cancer survivors. And so I'm hoping this old school Survivor thing becomes a little bit fun for people to get involved with.
Thanks to Ethan Zohn for the great conversation and the inspirational energy he provides to our community. If you're interested in an old school Survivor mug, visit shoppelotonia.org or click the link in the episode notes. Another thanks to our major funding partners for making all of this possible: the American Electric Power Foundation, Huntington, the L Brands Foundation, and Peggy and Richard Santulli. On the next episode of One Goal.
Well, they know going into it that they're required to ride, and they're actually very excited about it. They're excited about fundraising. They're excited about day of participation.
When Maria and I were thinking about what do we do this year, so we both came out with the idea that maybe we should celebrate our success.
This has been One Goal, a storytelling podcast from Pelotonia. I'm your host, cancer survivor and COO of Pelotonia, Joe Apgar. Interview and production scheduling by our marketing and communications duo, Emily Smith and Gabby Blauer. One Goal is carefully crafted and produced at the studios of Wessler Media by Vince Tornero. Mastering by Joey Gerwin at Orange. Special thank you to all of our guests for being willing to share their inspiring journeys for this podcast. Also, please rate, review, and subscribe so you can get seasons 1 and 2, as well as future episodes. If you want to learn more about the Pelotonia community and how you can make an impact on cancer research, see the link in the show notes or visit pelotonia.org. That's pelotonia.org.